Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to part 2 in this series of animating 2D in 3D Blender. In this video, we're going to go through cameras and their tracks and just kind of navigating this whole fun, powerful way to look at art and to move through a scene in 3D space. So I've brought up this little video here. I just did a quick YouTube search of a camera track, what it looks like in real life, because just to give a visual of what we're actually trying to accomplish here in Blender, minus the difficulty of setting up the track. So that's the idea. Just zoom through that a little bit. We're going to create a little camera track that moves around our object, points, and auto tracks it. So first thing we need to do is a new general layout. If you don't have one, you're going to get this. And then the second thing I'd like to do is get my second window. And of course, because I'm so good at this, there we go. I need to figure that out. I've yet to find help on how to master that. It's just a quirk that you get used to. On this, I'm going to go to my camera view so I can always see what it's seeing while I move around here. So now I'm going to hover. I did that by hitting number pad 0. And over here, I'm going to hit number pad 7 for our top orthographic view. I'm going to leave my square there. And now we're going to add something. Now there's two ways to add it in object mode. I'm going to get add here, but the quicker way, what people teach you in tutorials, is Shift A, and it gives you that same menu here. And what we want to add is a curve, and the curve that my tutor taught me is to use this path. And there's a reason why. There's different curves. There's the Bezier curve, then there's the path, and I have a private tutorial link down below. If you want to join that, you can actually go into more depth with him. He's really good at this. The math of things, but for our intent and purposes, we're going to always just use that path for our camera track. So I can go ahead and hit path, and what that does is I zoom in here with my middle mouse button. You can see it's right there. It's also over here, NURBS path. So if I double click that, I'm going to rename it capital C camera, capital P. Let's do track. That's camel casing from programming. Camera track. I just like to name things so we know what's going on in our scene here. Now that we've got that, we're going to go over for our first time to edit mode. Now I'm hovering over this window, not over this window. I can hit tab, edit mode there, or I can just go to click object mode. Let me hit escape, object mode to edit mode. And let me just go back to object mode. In object mode, we can move it around. So if I'm in top orthographic view. If I hit G, if you remember from our last one, we can move this around. I can bring it back here, and then left click. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, then shift middle click to move. I'm going to hit G again. And so it's free to move, and you can see over in the camera view where it's going. Now, if I wanted to constrain it, I could hit X, I could hit Y, and then if I'm in another view, I could hit Z and move it up. But for now, I'm just going to move it back to here. Okay, and once I've got it here, I'm going to go back to edit mode. And what edit mode allows us to do, I'm going to click and drag. You'll see these vector points here, and this is super powerful. So I'm going to hit E to extrude, and what that does is it adds another vector point. So I'm going to create a little track that kind of goes from one side of this cube to the other. So I'm going to click here, left click. I'm going to grab this one, G, to grab and move. I'm going to just click over here. And then I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to do G. I'm going to click and grab this one, G. And I'm just left clicking to place it. I'm going to grab this one, G. And click, and then G. And just get used to that. Move things around. Now, if I wanted to add another point, I'd hit E and extrude. Okay, but I don't want to do that right there. Undo. So what we've created here is just a little camera path that our camera is going to follow. So the next step, now that we've done that, is to tie our camera to this nice smooth path. And then once we've tied the camera to that path, we're going to force the camera to look at our object, our square. Now I want you to imagine, in fact, just for fun, let's go back into object mode. And I'm going to click and middle mouse click and just kind of look at this cube and see my camera path here. So just imagine this is your 2D imported animation, or it can be a 3D object. There's the sky's the limit with this. This is what's just so fun for me in Blender, because there's so many things you can do. Shift middle click over a little bit. Let's go ahead and just for fun, I'm going to do Shift A. First, let's go back to top view. Shift A. Just follow along here. Grease pencil, and instead of a blank, we're going to do a stroke. And we'll show you why in another lesson. This is just the way I was taught, and I appreciate this. So I'm going to hit stroke, and what it's done is add a stroke right at our origin point. Now I'm going to go to edit mode, A for select all the vector points, X, and delete all the points. And so we still have right here, if you look over here, we still have our drawing, okay? But we've deleted all the stroke points. And there's a reason we do that. I'll show you in a little bit later. So now that we've done that, we're going to go back into object mode, middle mouse button. I'm just going to look at the face of this square here. And I'm on the stroke here, which is our drawing, our grease pencil drawing. I'm going to change from object mode to draw mode. And I'm going to go ahead and change my pencil to a felt marker pen. And I'm going to make sure my radius is, and you can do a test like this, Control Z. Okay. But this time what we're going to do is I'm going to shrink this window here a little bit. And I'm going to come up here. And instead of drawing at the origin, I'm going to draw on the surface. Okay. So I'm going to change that right there to surface. And I'm going to put my offset to 0.05. Enter. Let's zoom in a little bit and shift middle mouse. Then I'm just using my middle mouse scrolly button, shift middle mouse. Now watch what happens if I just start to draw. Okay. And then I go to the side. Look what it's done. It's drawn with a little bit of an offset using this surface offset right here onto the surface. Now if I'm in this view as well and I draw here, look what it's done. It's drawn on the surface of the top, and I draw here. It's also done that. It's drawn on that surface. Isn't that really cool? So I'm going to go back to top view. I'm going to get shift and middle mouse, then scrolly wheel out so I can see my whole scene. And let's get out of draw mode. We'll do grease pencil a little bit later, but that was just kind of a fun way to visualize what you can do, you know, with grease pencil. You can draw on surfaces. You can do different things like that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 7, top view. I'm going to go out of draw mode, go back into object mode. So let's go ahead and do one of our first object constraints. And so we're going to go over here. We're going to go to the camera. I could also click on it here in my viewport. And right now we're on the object properties. We're going to go down till we see constraints. We're going to tap constraints, and we're going to add a constraint. And what we want to constrain this camera to is to this path. And so we're going to click here, and we have all these cool constraints that we can play with. And for this one, we're going to use follow path. So I'm going to click that. All right, so now that we have this constraint, so what we've done is we've added a constraint on the camera object. If I go click on a different object, you're going to see no constraints. I've only added to the camera, which is a really cool, powerful way to, you know, edit each object in your scene. There's lots of different things you can do. I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. It's exciting. So now that I've got this object constraint, there's this little eyedropper. What is my target? Well, I want to constrain it. So I'm going to click this. I want to constrain it to this camera track. I could go out here and click on it, or I can click on it here. I'm going to click that. Boom. And see what it's done. If I go down here in the timeline and I just scroll through this, nothing happens. Okay, so let me show you why. If I come over here now and I go like this, the camera is actually going to follow that path. But there's a problem. It's not really a problem. It's just math and how this works. Right now, so let me go back to the offset and the object constraint under the camera constraints, and 0, enter. The problem is it's going off of the world origin, this target here. And so to fix that, the first thing we want to do is come into here, into the object properties, and just do 0. I guess I can't tab 0 and 0. And now what we have is the camera is constrained right onto that path. And that has to do with the theory of the world origin. And I'm not going to go into depth here. We'll just cover what we need to get where we need to go. If you want some more theory, there's a link in the description that links to the private tutor lessons on the theory of why and the distances and why it works this way. But it's math, and it works precisely. So I'm going to go back to the constraint now. Now that we have zeroed out our position of the camera on our track, we're going to go back to the constraint. And now if I do the offset, you'll watch the camera follows it. And you'll see over here on this window on our camera view as it flies by. So there's another step we need to make, and that's where the camera's going to look at that object. And it's actually really easy to do. But you can imagine just by doing this, all you'd have to do is go to one keyframe. Okay, let's just, for fun, I'm going to hit 0, bring the camera back here. and I'm going to hit over here. I'm going to hit I. Now, remember in our first lesson, I, look, it turned yellow. It means it's recorded that keyframe. And let's say by the time we get to 250, we want, see how it's green now, meaning there's a keyframe on here, but there's nothing going on. Now it's going to turn orange. By the time we get to here, we want to do another keyframe. Orange has changed. It hasn't been recorded. I, now it's yellow. So if I hit back and play, look at that. Already our camera has been set up on a track. Easy peasy. So you can imagine you could have an object moving around. Pretend this is your character. Next, we want the camera to look at that object no matter what. And that's actually really easy to do. So we're in the constraints. I'm going to minimize this one so we have the follow path, and I'm going to click add constraint. And this time I want to track to something. Now, just like in programming, this one above this one is important because that's how it executes it. It does this and then this. So that'll matter if you're having a hard time using one of these constraints. Just try moving it above and see if that fixes it. So on the track to, we're going to do the same thing. We need a target. This time I want to track to this object here, the cube. Click and look at that, just like magic. Boom. Now we have, if I hit play, and this is where it gets really fun, we have this amazing camera view, this camera track. Now here's the power of this. I'm going to hit play. I can go into edit mode. So I'm going to click my camera track. And while it's playing live, I can go over here to edit mode. Okay, I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to grab this in G. And while it's playing live, I can, oh, I don't like that. That's too close. Let's bring it out this way. Or, okay, that looks pretty smooth. I don't like this. You know what? I wanted to go up a little. So I'm going to switch to 3. Now watch this. I'm going to grab this guy, G, and I'm going to bring my camera track up. So we're going to get this epic up view. Watch this and see how it goes up now. Beautiful. So I hope this at least excites you a little bit as it did me when I first learned this. Click. I'm just selecting it. G, left click. Select, G, left click. Okay. And now if I go like this, you can see I've created this amazing camera track. So you don't have to keyframe where you want the camera to be. You just tell it to follow a track that you've created. And so if we wanted to go a full circle, we could also do that with a path of a full circle. So up to this point, this should give you enough. If you need to go back and rewatch it, do that. I had to a few times myself to play around and just rotate around anything. Now let's say we wanted to rotate this square in our sequence here. So we've got this fun camera view, but let's say we wanted to rotate this square. So I'm in object mode again. I'm going to make sure I'm on the cube. But we've got a problem now. If I'm on the cube and I go over to here, I could go into number 3 number pad, and now I'm in the front view, and I could go G. But what happens is that grease pencil object didn't move with it. And at first that took me a while to figure out, well, how do I marry that to the cube itself? It's actually quite easy, and this is where we're going to introduce parenting. Parenting, you're probably going to be really familiar with. It's in almost any software that you work with. So all you got to do is come over here. I'm on the cube, on the stroke, and I've shift selected them. So cube, shift select, stroke. Now that also got the light. We don't want that. So over here, if we did here, we could do cube, shift, select, stroke, shift, select, cube. But over here, you got to use control or you can move these around as well. So cube, control, stroke. Now it's got them both highlighted. I'm going to do control P. And we're going to set the parent to the object. Boom. So now I should be able to move it and they both move. And that's what we want. So escape. So I'm going to hit pause on my timeline, back, number pad 3. And I'm going to use, again, as we learned, we're going to go over to the object. We're going to hit I. Default. So those are now all keyframed, and let's just have it go about midway, and let's just play around with a little bit. Let's go like this, and notice how the camera's moving with it, which is really cool, because so now they're all orange. Well, sorry, let me finish that thought. Because we put a constraint on the camera, if you remember, the reason why it's tracking is because of that tracking constraint right here. Track 2. Boom. So back to our stroke. We could call this whatever it is. Let's say it's a dice or something. Let's just call it the dice. And inside now you're going to see you have the cube and the stroke properties of the grease pencil object. So I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to come back to here, and nothing's happened. So if I go back, it's not going to remember any of this if I hit play, because it's orange. I need to hit I and make it yellow so it actually does a keyframe. Okay. So now if I come back here and I copy this one, copy in the timeline, I'm on this object and I go to the very end, I hit paste. Now if I hit play, not only do we have the camera track, but we also have this cool rotating square. So that's how you parent objects. So if you had a grease pencil object with that, now they're parented together. Otherwise they move separately. Now, the next step beyond this is a step that we'll call it a bonus step, where if you're a photographer especially, this is like, ooh, this is fun. But whether or not you're a photographer doesn't matter, but it's using f-stop. And what f-stop does is it gives you the ability to focus and have something blur in the background. So as an example of this, if you look here on my 15,000 subscriber, my first video, you can see that these people are blurred in the foreground, and my focus is on my character here. And as he walks through, the ones in the background are blurred now. That's your f-stop. See how blurry those are? And its focus is here. Really cool. Now I'm blurry and its focus is here. And it's actually really easy to do that. And it's simply exactly what we just did with the camera. So if I go to the camera and I go to object constraints, instead of tracking to the cube, we're going to track to an invisible blank. To create that invisible blank, we're going to go back to the top view. So make sure you hit the number pad 7. We're going to do Shift A. And I said blank, but it should be empty. And we're going to come down here to the empty, and it's just going to be plain axes. And what that does, if I hit G, it creates this empty. We can rotate it. We can, move it around and hit escape. And the reason we want to do something like this is to maybe offset the camera's view. So let's go back to 7, number pad, G. Let's move it just to there. And now we're going to go over here and let's name this to camera focus. So we have camera focus, we have camera track, and we have camera. So I'm going to click and shift select those 3. Come over here and hit M. I want to move them to a collection. Now I didn't parent them, I just moved them to a collection. Let's just do camera. Boom. Create. And so now I have a little bit more organization. Now I have this in a collection here. So rather than the camera looking at the object, now we have a camera focus, which is going to be powerful to use as you move around, because we could actually create a track for the camera focus. Let's say you've created an entire scene and you want to move your 2D imported sequence through that scene so it looks like it's in this environment, and you've set it up to look all 2D even though some of it's 3D. You could have a camera focus, so that instead of focusing on that, all we got to do is click on the camera, go to the constraints. Instead of tracking to the cube, I'm going to X that out. I'm going to hit this. We can go over to the camera focus either here or here. So I'll just go here. Boom. So now if I hit play, it's focused on this. So I can actually go stay in object mode, G, and see over there on the right, the camera, it's going to focus on wherever this is at. And so you could have this, tied to the character, and he's running through outer space, or he's flying an airplane, or whatever it is. And now we have this setup here. Now you could even pre-position this with its own track, and let's just fly through this, because you should be able to do this now. If I want to do that, do Shift A. We're going to go into a curve, path. I'm in top view, number pad 7, G, move it over here, edit mode, click and select G, click and select G, click and select G, make sure left click and select G, and click and select G. So let's just pretend that's our camera, the path we want this to follow. So now all we have to do is go and click on our camera focus, add its own constraint, follow path, target, this NURBS path, okay, I missed it, target, we want this one, All right, so the reason that didn't work, newbie here, is I was in edit mode. So I've got to make sure when I'm doing that, I've got to be in object mode. Edit mode is to edit the vertexes, the vertices, the points of the vector, and we got to be in object mode, something that you'll get used to. Now that I'm in object mode and I'm on the camera focus and I'm on, see, it didn't even add a constraint because I was in edit mode. So I need to add that. I need to do follow path, eyedropper. Boom. Now it's going to follow it, but it's offset because it's determining it based on the world origin. So I just go to the object and just zero these out. 0, 0. So the camera is looking here. So if I hit play, it's just going to sit there and look at that. So what we want to do on the camera focus is we're going to say, you know what? Under this constraint, I want the camera to first look over here, and I could extend it or I could just keep going. I'll just follow that path even though there's nothing there. I want it to be there. So now I can hit offset I keyframe, and by the time it gets to here, I want the offset to go behind this so it's looking at it. Okay, and this is just giving you an example of what you could do. And then at the very end, I want the offset to be on this path over here. Now let's just bring it on over there. And then I'm going to go into 3D space. I'm going to go back to this middle one, and I'm going to hit 3. And rather than select the camera focus, we want the camera, not the camera track. We want the new track. So let's do, this is going to be called the focus, or let's call this the focus track, because this is the track for the focus. And I have that now selected. I need to be in edit mode, excuse me. If I hit play, you'll be able to see this, but I'm going to be in edit mode. If I use my middle mouse button, you can kind of see where we're at. What I'm aiming for is grabbing this guy, so I can just do it here and then hit 3. I'm going to hit G. I'm going to bring it up. Actually, let's bring it down so it actually looks at it. So now my path, if I click that, it'll go down. There we go. It's not far enough, so I'm going to hit G. I'm going to select all those, hit G, and bring it down a little more. So now I've got my object view. But I think you get the point. The point is you can create paths for anything and have them follow each other with those constraints. All right, to wrap up this video, let's leave off with a couple tips and tricks and something cool that can add some stylization to your videos. To do that, we're going to go over, make sure we're in the object mode. That's important. Click on the camera. We were here on the object properties. We're going to go down to the data properties of the camera, and we have an option under depth of field. I'm going to check that and watch what happens when I mess with the focus distance. I'm going to come all the way down. Boom. See how blurry that is? That is this effect that I did just real quick on my video here, where you can see the background characters. Well, if you looked real fast there, I was blurry at first, and then my depth of field changed. And what I did is I focused on an empty behind my character and just moved it where I wanted the camera to focus. And there I'm blurry, and this is focused, and now I'm back and focused, and the background characters are blurry. So that's what this is here, is this depth of field. And you can marry it to an object. So I could click this and go to my camera focus, or you can just frame it here, hit I. I'm going to undo that. And as you can see here, in order to see this, you've got to be in render view rather than just your object view here. And then the last tip and trick here is if you've got a whole bunch of different objects and it's kind of hard to see it. So let's just do top view. Let's do Control C, V, G. Let's just say I have an object behind this object and I want to be able to see it. That's what this little toggle X-ray thing is for. Now I can see what's behind it, and also wireframe mode as well. So those are just different view modes. I'm typically on my camera side, I'm on rendered, and I don't have my X-ray mode on. And then on this side, I'm typically just on your solids view. So those are the two things. If you want to go in a little bit more theory and go a little bit deeper, I have a link in the description with our friend Thomas over at Point Cloud for those private tutoring sessions. You can join those, learn a little bit more theory. Otherwise, please do like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think and what you're working on. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one.